but it's on the Oregon laws. Ginger Gatchett is from the Oregon State Police, and she's the one that processes your claims so you can have a gun in your house. And she's here to tell you all the secrets of the laws that we don't always read and see. Ginger?
So I have a couple of handouts that I want to do first so that you guys can kind of follow along. Not all of it's going to be on the PowerPoint, but Victor and I thought it was important that you have not only your disqualifiers, but especially for the advocates, the Oregon and federal statutes that go along with those. I know that probably not everybody has a computer, but Google's a wonderful friend. So along with those, I have a reference sheet that's got website information and also some of those specific statutes that you can be looking at. Not everything is always updated, but I'm just going to give you some basics today. And I would kind of like to do a small introduction and just kind of find out, you know, where everybody's at, why you became an advocate, or got involved with Victor or whatever. So, if you'll take one and pass them on.
Speaking of the camera, we are recording without broadcasting, webcasting live. So if there's anything that you say, a question, a name, anything you say that you want edited out of the finished product, just make sure you contact me and tell me what needs to be edited out in case you forget and say something about a name or something that you don't want on the internet or publication. So just contact me and we'll make sure that gets out, all right?
One other thing, when he's done, those that want a CD of the class, he's going to be selling them for $6. $1 goes to Vets Helping Vets, $5 goes to him. He spends a lot of time and a lot of his own free time away from his regular job at the radio station to be here to assist us with veterans. And he buys the CDs, he buys everything. We need to recoup him and help him out.
So, what we're going to cover today is what is standard now. I'm not going to cover the issues that you have right now with the possibilities of what's going on with possible changes with PTSD. I'm not going to know exactly what's going to happen with that or where they're going to go.
Okay, let's stop right here. Let's move this from the
Oh. Encouraging drinking?
That is a special bottle of beer. If you read the back of it, it is a dedication to one of our units in Afghanistan.
Oh, is it?
Yes, it is. Read the back.
Okay. All right, but is it appropriate to have that?
Absolutely. They only give those to the soldiers that were able to return home. And each soldier got 2 cases, and that's a signed bottle from one of the soldiers that come home.
Okay, just, all right.
One of our main sponsors, if everybody wants to know, is Four Spirit Distillery.
And there's extra copies there, so if people come in later or somebody wants a copy of it, it's available. So anyways, like I was saying, those, we're not going to cover the PTSD issue today because I'm not sure where they're going to go with that. I'm not sure what's going to happen with that. Things change for me on a daily basis. I did, however, Google and find a copy of one of those letters that went out to our veterans, and that's also available on the web. They've redacted stuff, but so anyways, introductions. I'm Ginger Merritt, formerly Gatchett. My brother is a vet. My recently deceased nephew-in-law was a vet. I met Victor through helping my brother, and of course Victor has a way of finding out information about you without doing waterboarding or fingernail pulling. And so when he found out that I worked for the Oregon State Police firearms unit up in Salem, He, needless to say, picked my brain and then asked me if I would do an informal class to help advocates and people who had questions about Oregon laws, federal laws. And so, like I said, there's a handout about federal and Oregon laws specific to the possible disqualifiers or reasons why a person might be delayed on their background check. I also gave you references to most of the information that's on the PowerPoint. So I've been working for the Oregon State Police for over 9 years. I'm a call taker, which means that I take the information from the dealers, the private parties at the gun shows, and private parties off the street that want to sell to another private party, and they want to verify that the person that's receiving that firearm should be getting it. A little bit of background of information. They call us, we get the information on the person purchasing the gun and the firearm that they're purchasing. And in about 3 minutes or less, we can generally tell the person that's calling in and selling the firearm whether the person can be approved, delayed, or denied. We also, of course, check the gun to make sure it's not lost or stolen. If it's listed as lost or stolen, then we have Northern Command come out to wherever the gun's being sold at and verify that that's their gun. They pick it up and they attempt to give it back to the owner. Pretty important, I think. You know, I mean, you've taken the time to do all that research on your firearm, you buy it, and then somebody takes it. As far as that goes, the one thing that I would suggest to everybody that owns a firearm, write the information down somewhere else. Keep it stored away from your firearm, because if it's lost or stolen and you don't have that information, we don't register guns in Oregon for the Oregon State Police, so we can't help you. You'll have to go back to the dealer that you bought it from. So, very sad when we have to tell people that. So, I have an associate's and a bachelor's degree in criminal justice. Recently started my master's in Homeland Security. So while I'm not an expert, I certainly have the experience to give you some information on maybe answering some of your questions, giving you some information you didn't have before, some resources on where to find it. And specifically for Victor and this class, we decided we would call it Veteran Advocacy, Firearms Rights and Responsibility Basics. And considering how many acronyms there are in the military and all over the place, we decided to call it HERES. It's History of American Law, Education for Advocates, Awareness of Rights and Social Responsibilities of Firearm Ownership, Resource Information Gathering, and of course, support for our veterans. So recently, Victor asked me if I would be willing to give this mini training to new and existing advocates on the ins and outs of the federal and Oregon rules and regulations that may or may not affect our veterans' rights to have firearms. We know that some of the issues I will talk about today are keeping some from being approved in their background checks for purchasing and or possessing them. I feel that knowledge is the key to helping ourselves and others, not just to purchase firearms, but in employment, volunteering, and many other factors in life that can be interrupted by having missing or incorrect information on state and federal information systems. My goal is quite simple. It's to help you in understanding what our veterans might be facing as you advocate for them. So I've decided to call this Here's Veteran Advocate Dream. And as it states, part of this is going to be history of American law, because many people don't understand how it all came about, how Congress and other lawmakers and local and Oregon state managed to get the jurisdiction and authority to be able to tell people when they couldn't and when they could buy firearms. And again, it also covers, and what people don't realize is employment and volunteering. Those are all affected by these particular rights being taken away from you. So, the United States Constitution is made up of the preamble, original articles or sections, and amendments. It's the basic guidelines for protecting the rights of the people, providing a way of running the government of the United States by the people through representatives, and attempting to keep any one group of ideas from restricting the rights of another's through a system of checks and balances. Authority and jurisdiction for firearms rules and regulations are based on the Constitution. The second article of amendment acknowledges that a well-armed militia is important to protecting the freedom against foreign powers and/or tyrannical rulers. The states and local constitutions are based on those guidelines as well. The Founding Fathers realized that the federal government could not cover every regional issue of the United States, and they gave the rights of powers to create laws at the state and local level that were not covered by federal laws in the 10th Article of Amendment. The 14th Article of Amendment gave citizenship to anyone born in the United States or naturalized to citizenship. It also gave those citizens rights of protection from punishment for crimes unless the citizen pled guilty with understanding of what their rights are, or they were convicted by a judge or jury after judicial procedure was followed. The Second Amendment to the United States Constitution today is based on modern laws, regulations, etc., and the ability to purchase, possess, sell, transport, etc. a firearm are based on the social rights of whether a person can sit on a jury, vote in an election, or hold office. So you can see why these are going to be important. Without those rights, your firearms rights are not included. So we're going to be looking at ways to be able to appeal those decisions, correct misinformation, set aside convictions, and where some of those other rights can be restored. These are the rights that some people lose when they're convicted of some felonies and misdemeanor crimes of domestic violence, for example. Sometimes the loss of rights are only temporary, and sometimes they are permanent. Article 1 of the Constitution created 3 branches of government. It gave us the executive, legislative, and judicial. The executive branch of the government is responsible for enforcing the laws of the land. The president, vice president, department heads, cabinet members, and heads of independent agencies carry out this mission. The legislative, in the Article 1 of the Constitution, established the legislative or lawmaking branch of the government. It has 2 branches, the Congress, which is the Senate and House of Representatives, and agencies that support Congress. The judicial branch is the courts that decide arguments about the meaning of laws and how they are applied. They also decide if laws violate the Constitution. This is known as judicial review, and it's how federal courts provide checks and balances on the legislative and executive branches. State and local jurisdictions have the same types of checks and balances in place also due to those amendments. The states and local constitutions are based on those as well. The Bill of Rights, which is all those amendments, was designed to specifically spell out the immunities of individual citizens. During the debates on the adoption of the Constitution, its opponents repeatedly charged that the Constitution as drafted would open the way to tyranny by the central government. Fresh in their minds was the memory of the British violation of civil rights before and during the Revolution. They demanded a Bill of Rights that would spell out the immunities of individual citizens. Several state conventions, in their formal ratification of the Constitution, asked for such amendments. Others ratified the Constitution with the understanding that the amendments would be offered. On September 25, 1789, the First Congress of the United States therefore proposed to the state legislatures 12 amendments to the Constitution that met arguments most frequently which concerned the number of constituents for representative and compensation to the congressmen. Those weren't ratified. Articles 3 to 12, however, were ratified by 3/4 of the state legislature. These constitute then the first 10 amendments of the Constitution, known as the Bill of Rights. Article 2, the well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. All laws not made under federal law but given authority under state jurisdiction, which includes municipal justice, state district, superior, and circuit court, all fall under the next amendment. The article gave the states the right to create legislation under state and local constitution for any laws that were not covered under federal. So, for example, banks and savings and loan institutions are insured by federal funds. So their cases of charges like embezzlement and bank robbery fall under that federal court. Civil cases like divorce and child custody are heard in state county courts, so cases of alleged misdemeanor crimes of domestic violence are generally heard at that level too. Generally, violations of traffic laws and city constitutions are heard in municipal and justice cases. So, Article 10 was powers not delegated to the United States by the Constitution nor prohibited by it to the states are reserved to the states respectively or to the people. In Amendment 14, that was passed by Congress on June 13th, 1866, it gave rights to an agency that you're all going to be familiar with at this point. It established the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and eventually explosives was added to that. They enforce federal criminal laws regulating, for example, firearms and explosive industry, as the name implies. Now it falls under the Department of Justice, which, after 9/11, they were all brought under the jurisdiction of the Department of Homeland Security. In an attempt to protect society as a whole and American and immigrant lives and mitigate the possibility of the recurrence of highly public American tragedies, some of the laws and regulations regarding firearms, dangerous weapons, destructive devices, and even exotic animals have been passed. General age rules are 18 years old to buy a long gun, 21 years old to buy a handgun, and receivers or stocks only must be from the state of purchase and the same age for handguns, because they could be made into either a handgun or a long gun, and so that's why they made the ruling. Purchasers must also have current photograph identification and proof of residence taken from government-issued identification. They are residents of the state they live in. Each state and federal guidelines must be followed, but there are always exceptions to requiring a Brady background check. Some are based on what other agencies, like law enforcement, have checked for employment, or in the instance of federally licensed dealers, where the business license itself is checked under the name of the person. Antique guns and black powder firearms do not normally require one either. And that's because they were not designed to fire the manufactured ammunition that we have. So if those guns have been altered to be able to fire that ammunition, then it requires your gun check. In Oregon, a private party to private party gun sale not at a gun show at this time does not require a background check. Oregon is one of few that have closed the loophole for gun shows, to where even the private parties have to do the background checks. So this slide talks about the 14th article or amendment that discussed that point of you're either a U.S. citizen or an immigrant becoming a U.S. citizen, in which case eventually through time and training and tests they become naturalized citizen. So no state shall make or enforce any law which shall abridge the privileges or immunities of citizens of the United States. Nor shall any state deprive any person of life, liberty, or property without due process of law, nor deny to any person within its jurisdiction the equal protection of the laws. So this is where it's going to be important for you as advocates and friends and family and community members to kind of have some idea of what those are. And here's the slide about alcohol, tobacco, and firearms, and when they were established. Rights to purchase firearms can also affect possessing of firearms. We have the Gun Control Act, National Firearms Act, and those should all be covered under your handouts that have the information on references. So these acts are based on several type of rules and regulations. You've got, that's 18 United States Code, Chapter Title 44, Section 922. This was the based on the original Gun Control Act that most of us now know as the Brady Law. Any idea who Brady was? Yeah. It's based on individual state laws. Each state has its own constitution. Each state has its own requirements. So someone who may be denied in another state, we would have to look at what it is about that state law that actually disqualified them. And some of the state laws are actually stronger than some of the federal. So having to compare those, it takes quite a bit of information. So if we delay somebody, it's not just because we don't like the state you come from, or what your weight or height was on your driver's license, or what neighborhood you live in. We're looking at all of those, so, and we're going to go over most of those today. One that's going to affect a lot of your people that you're advocating for is that military discharge and court-martials. For the most part, only dishonorable discharges and general court-martials qualify for that disqualifier. And the general court-martials are based on the fact that they could have, not that they did, but could have received more than 1 year in jail. That's the normal federal disqualifier. That's what they consider felonies versus misdemeanors or infractions or violations. The new ATF rulings and regulations, those are changing on a daily basis. As a matter of fact, I found out Friday that one of the things that we thought we had in the bag and did a pretty good job of doing background checks on, changed again. So unfortunately for those that fell under that in previous years, we'll have to relook at, which means we have to delay those people again until we find the information. Very unfortunate, but they are looking into making things faster for us. Modern day of electronics. They're looking at being able to hold that information, update criminal histories, holding facilities that do a better job of maintaining that stuff so we can get it faster so that you don't have to wait so long. It's kind of maddening, some of the wait times that we have. And has anybody talked to any of you advocates about their wait times on firearms purchases? Yeah? Yeah. So we're working on it. Now we're up to your handout about unlawful to sell or dispose of weapons or unlawful to purchase firearms if. So, this one is covered under number 3 on your list of unlawful to sell or dispose of handout. Person is free on any form of pre-trial release while awaiting trial for a felony. Those are covered under indictments, and the term indictment includes an indictment or information in any court under which a crime punishable by imprisonment for a term exceeding 1 year may be prosecuted. Again, we're coming back to that 1 year that you could have spent in jail or more. And again, not on what you could have, or not on what you did receive, but what you could have received. And this is generally accomplished through a prosecuting attorney or grand jury. And these are going to be the most common disqualifiers that we're going to cover today. And I'll give you some time later on to ask questions and cover any other concerns that you might have. So the indictment is also the term used for crime punishable by imprisonment by a term of or exceeding 1 year, but it does not include any federal or state offenses pertaining to antitrust violations, unfair trade practices, restraints of trade, or other similar offenses relating to the regulation of business practices. Or B, any state offense classified by the laws of the state as a misdemeanor and punishable by a term of imprisonment of 2 years or less. So again, those are those states that they've said these 2 years or less are not felonies. They've specifically said those are misdemeanor crimes. So we can't use those against a person attempting to purchase a firearm. So the next one is going to be your fugitive from justice. And fugitive from justice is going to be your 7th one on that list. And that's covered under the federal program. Term fugitive from justice means any person who has fled from any state to avoid prosecution for a crime or to avoid giving testimony in any criminal proceeding. So that could include witnesses that have decided that they're going to run. And a court has determined through indictment on a charge or failure to appear or to complete punishment after conviction that a person needs to appear before them. The judge or prosecuting party issues a warrant for the defendant to appear in their court. The warrant states which court issued the warrant, which includes their jurisdiction and authority to be able to issue a warrant, what the charges is or are, and what areas they are willing to extradite from. So it may be limited to only the state that they happen to be in, or it could be nationwide. That is a disqualification for a firearms purchase. Pretty simple to take care of in a lot of cases. You just call the jurisdiction and you say, what's the warrant for? What do I need to do to clear it up? And in some cases it's a matter of paying a fine and the warrant's gone and we no longer see it. But as long as that warrant is active, the person's going to be disqualified. The next one is unlawful users. Now this doesn't mean that it's just, somebody who decides that, say they're in extra pain and that morning they take an additional pain pill and go back to bed. That's not what we're talking about. We are talking about an unlawful user of or being addicted to any controlled substance. These are controlled substances that are listed under Federal Controlled Substances Act. That's 21 of the United States Code, Section 802. There's actually 5 different segments that cover everything from cocaine down to tranquilizers. And it's based on the differences of how addictive the medication is, how easy it is to get, and how it affects a person's body chemicals and their moods. It covers illicit drugs prescribed by a doctor. It's disqualifying if not used as prescribed by the doctor. For example, driving a motor vehicle while using alcohol, and specifically drugs that state do not use alcohol and drive while taking this medication. So the guidelines are there. It's disqualifying because you're putting people in danger, not only yourself, but other people that are on the road. and that was why they put it into effect. And then there's B of that, which is having no valid prescription. Your friend across the street says, hey, I noticed that you're in pain today. Here's my 800 milligram prescription for gabapentin. And, here, take one of these and try it. And then you drive your vehicle and someone pulls you over because you're weaving, passing without, using your blinker. They've got some reason to pull you over to take a look and see what's going on. And they do a field test, and you've gone through your drunk driving test, and blow into this tube, and there's nothing. And they ask you, have you been using any substance today? Oh, well, my friend across the street gave me this gabapentin, and it's great, and I don't feel any pain, and, well, do you have a prescription for that? No, I don't. Okay. The person admitted to using something that wasn't theirs. That's a disqualifier for 1 year based on them admitting that they used it and it wasn't their prescription. There's two basic disqualifiers for that. One is, was it field tested? So somebody's driving around and they got, say, methamphetamine in their car and they're pulled over. The officer field tests it and it comes back as positive for an illegal drug. They can be disqualified for 1 year based on that field test. So they go to court and they're eventually convicted of that possession of those illegal drugs. That starts a whole nother year of disqualification. So if you don't go to court for, say, 4 to 6 months, you're disqualified for that 4 to 6 months. Then comes the conviction, and say the prosecuting attorney decides that they're just going to go forward with a misdemeanor crime. You could be facing 1 year disqualifier for the drugs. If you get probation, you're disqualified through the probation under Oregon law. So it can get pretty intense on how long these disqualifications can last. Now, normally there are small possession cases, so they're heard under misdemeanor or those violations. You start running around with a pound of the stuff in your car, and the prosecuting attorney or grand jury comes in with a felony, and you're convicted of that felony, then you're looking at the possibility of not being able to get a concealed handgun license through the sheriff's department for the rest of your life. Most of those are very hard to get rid of as felony convictions. So there goes your gun purchasing and possessing rights for the rest of your life. There are some ways to expunge those, and we'll go over those later on. This is a big one that's coming up for a lot of people. Originally, this one was mental defectives. And until we knew a lot more about some of the mental and chemical issues going on with people, it was only as mental defective based on the fact of a person was up on charges of a crime in pretrial phase, and they did not believe that the person could become their own advocate for defense. Because they couldn't be a witness for themselves, they decided that they were incompetent to stand trial. Normally what they would do is they would send them to treatment, find out if that treatment worked, and then review again whether they were able to give their own defense. Then we had those that were guilty by reason of insanity. They were not technically adjudicated as guilty in most respects, but something happened during the crime that created a situation where they were a danger again to themselves or society. And rather than let them go out the doors, they would normally commit them to a mental institution. Now, with all of our wonderful budget cuts, the age of some of our buildings, the number of beds available due to privatization, a lot of that's changed, and they don't do this nearly as often as they used to. This particular piece on the incompetence section, I know affected a lot of our veterans through strokes, heart attacks. At some point, the person is incapable of taking care of their own affairs. Those affairs could be physical, they could be legal, they could be financial. They could be temporary, they could be permanent. But what I found is that, one, a lot of those circumstances, either A, didn't have a way of appealing that when the person became able or competent to take care of their own information, or two, nobody understood exactly where it needed to go back to have them to review that and take it off. So what happens was, a lot of our veterans were at the VA hospital. They were in hospital care. They were ruled that they couldn't take care of their own financial means. And so someone else was given the approval to take care of their needs. So what happened was, all of those were on the VA list of people that were incompetent to take care of their own. As federal rules changed, and those also came into requiring those particular agencies to comply with new changes in the federal law, that information basically got dumped into the system. And so people that are being denied at this point would need to actually have a statement from their doctor saying that they are now competent, or a ruling by the VA's administration office that says this person is now their own payee, and it would have to be reviewed to be taken out of those systems.
And that, I can comment on that, because in 1998 I had a stroke. And I was considered at that point in time unable to take care of my own affairs. My wife was placed as the payee, and she was, every 3 months, the VA would send somebody to audit her books to make sure she was spending my money properly and using it in a manner of taking care of me. And that lasted 3 years before the VA ruled that I was competent to have be my own payee. And that was after my stroke, because I had short-term memory loss. I was lucky to remember something you told me 10 minutes after I was told. So they do that, and the VA does report it. And it's just, I went to buy a gun, and I was denied because of the fact that it had not got into the system. And boy, we were right on the phone to the VA saying, hey, get this straightened out now. So it does take some time, because the VA don't, even though they give you back your payee status, they don't go back and report to the Drug and Firearms Divisions and allow you to just start drawing. Unless you say something to them and make them do it, they're not going to do it.
So, in that respect, we still have a lot of work ahead of us. for employees for federal and Oregon and other states and localities, turnover is incredible. Training on rights, which is where you're going to be advocating for, very little if none. Information sharing about what to do when they're committed or when they're no longer able to take care of their own affairs is pretty much written into procedures. But what happens, like in Victor's case, where it's no longer the situation, that isn't trained on very well. And so you as advocates can help us, whether it's talking to your representatives or whatever, or actually knowing that this may be the situation for your vets, to say, hey, you know, were you ever committed? Were you ever considered incompetent? As a pointer of, this may be why they're denied.
And then, Ginger, along with that, could you touch a little bit on, you know, because we're talking about the incompetency, also a little bit on the self-commitment versus court-ordered commitment?
I'm glad to. So, the requirements are that a committee, ruling committee, a judge, or doctor must actually commit you. Self-commitment does not count. Just like when we talked earlier about for a conviction to stand, you have to give up your rights for a trial and then have a judge or jury convict you. In this case, you must have a commitment. It must be by somebody else. If you're not feeling good and your health is not good and you decide that you're a little depressed that day and you go over and you ask the VA, and we're getting a new one in Lebanon, I hear, for temporary housing, that you would like to have a little bit of time away, whether it's 24 hours, 48 hours, 72 hours, a week, whatever it takes for you to go to get that treatment, and then you come out, that is not a reason to have your rights removed from you. Got it? Okay. So here we go back to this being a United States citizen or being naturalized citizen. This one is about illegal aliens attempting to purchase firearms. This one also is covered through on the 4473, which is the application for purchase of a firearm. This one is covered under question 14, and it simply states, are you a U.S. citizen? If you're a U.S. citizen, you check the yes box, no further questions on that, and you proceed. But in this case, we're talking about disqualifiers. And this one is under, well, it's the one before the last one on our handout. This is persons that are illegal aliens. So what's happened is the person is unlawfully or illegally in the United States. So, and this covers every country other than ours. If you come into the United States and you weren't entering legally or lawfully and given approval, and you can't verify that you have an immigrant card or a reason to be here, you're not going to get a firearm. Now, there are some exceptions. We have some, and it's not really exceptions to the illegal alien law, it's exceptions to being an immigrant, not a U.S. citizen or a naturalized citizen. These generally are coming from other countries. They're here for only a temporary reason. It could be going to school, it could be specifically for a job, it could be for a hunting event, championship, where they're coming into the U.S. just for a specific time period. Once that time period is over, that alien must leave the country or reapply to have an extension given to their time in the country, or they fall under this illegal or unlawful alien act.
Take a break.
Yeah, it might be a good time. Yeah, stand up.
Let's take 10 minutes.
Spot for a chat session later.
There you go.
There we go.
Okay, everybody ready? So here we are back to that discharge from the armed forces under dishonorable conditions. And I think we actually pretty well covered that one.
Well, I got a question very quickly on that, because it says dishonorable, and, but the veterans lose their rights under the VA status if they receive an undesirable discharge, other than honorable.
This one is specifically and only dishonorable discharges. Nothing else applies. If you just get a general discharge or you get other than honorable conditions, doesn't apply. Only dishonorable. Protect your DD-214 with your life. That's all I've got to say. Because sometimes we can get them and sometimes we can't.
Take them to the courthouse and register them for nothing.
And that's an awesome thing to do. Because it opens all kinds of doors for you to have that certified at the courthouse. They keep a copy for you. Now, as far as you trying to go back in and get another copy of it, might cost you some money.
For veterans, it's free.
Veterans,
They can get certified copies as they need them from
Yeah.
the courthouse.
I've already went back and got a couple of them.
good, good. So that's one of those that I like to hear about, because it shouldn't cost our vets money to get copies of their own records.
Right.
You know.
And for advocates, Victor, would you explain the other than honorable to honorable kind of thing?
Under the, if you're released from the military under a, let's say, a general discharge other than honorable, you have 1 year to apply to the Department of Defense to have that changed and upgraded to a either general with honorable conditions or honorable discharge. A general discharge, you have one. A general under honorable, you have the right to apply within 1 year to get it changed. Some wait 10 or 15 years and find out that, hey, I could have did this, can I still do it? Yes, you can still apply, but normally they're not overturned because of the time period you've waited. A general under honorable conditions, the only thing you lose, and you have to go to a Board of Appeals with the VA, is a general under honorable or general under other. You lose your education rights, and you have to apply for special dispensation to get those back. And it's a shame because they're releasing a lot of our soldiers right now under general discharges under honorable conditions, because they're downsizing, and it's just a way that they can get rid of them under administrative ways of getting them out early. If you want to get your discharge changed, it can take up to 3 years after it's processed and sent to the Department of Defense, because it goes before a board of 9 that make that decision. So any young soldier coming home, if they've got them, you need to encourage them to get their paperwork in right away, because it's very difficult to get them changed.
What benefits, Victor, are affected besides just their educational?
If it's an undesirable discharge, other than honorable, if it's undesirable or a dishonorable discharge, you lose all of your veterans benefits. Now, under an undesirable, you can go back and appeal to get some of your benefits back. That would be medical through the VA, but even at that, they're very limited to only the disabilities that you had in the service. You lose the right, until it's changed, you lose the right to even applying for disability benefits, even if you were injured in the service. So those benefits you would have wanted to fight for before you got out. And a lot of people just give up and they get angry and they say, I quit. So you do lose a lot of your benefits. The one thing, if you read in the books, and I'll pass them out here to those that don't have them, it says other than honorable. So you can lose your rights very quickly, and so you want to be very careful. If you have general discharges under honorable conditions, you pretty much hold intact all of your benefits. The education program is changing every day. Every day. The National Guard and the United States Marine Corps has just last week cut education benefits. So they're going to get very few educational benefits that they've already earned. And it's all under this sequester that they made those cuts. So our kids are starting to lose the benefits that they thought they had. So a lot of kids that are in the National Guard are getting out because of that. They've served, they went overseas, they're coming back, they wanted to use their education benefits, and now they're finding out that they're virtually gone. So it's one that's going to be coming up a lot. You're going to hear, people are going to be asking you questions. So we really need to pay attention to what's going on, because our veterans are going to be distraught when they find out.
And a lot of them, the only reason they went in was to be able to get those education benefits. And they're coming back, and there's really no jobs available for them,
Now,
even after all that experience.
in saying there's no jobs available, can I interrupt just for a minute? In saying there's no jobs available, some of them in here already know I was contacted last week. I got a phone call last night. If you are a welder, you don't have to be certified, but if you can weld steel, aluminum, and you've got good work ethics, and you show up on the job, and you want to work, or if you've got computer skills, or if you have an engineering background, or if you have drafting background. There are 7 companies that have gotten a hold of me and said, we want veterans today. They called me last night. How many resumes are you going to get on our desk? By Wednesday. These companies, most of their employees are 20 to 30 years with the companies. They're retiring. They want to open these jobs up to the veterans. Most of these jobs will also include additional education paid for by the companies. So if you know somebody, they need to get in here and see me.
we have an opportunity to get veterans working if they've got skills in those fields. 3 of the companies are pipeline companies, natural gas here in Oregon. And the pay for welding on pipelines is very good. So we need to get our veterans working. If you know if they got any of those skills, I've got 4 people bringing me resumes this week on computer skills. They've just finished their degrees at LBCC and they're veterans. And they're going to bypass their employment agencies. The resumes go right to the CEOs of the company. Those were the ones that sat down with us. How many know Jay Burcham, Burcham Metal here in town? Jay Burcham is heading it up. And I take the resumes and applications and DD 214 to him. He lays it on the CEO's desk. It's a meeting they had last Wednesday, and I was in a meeting Thursday morning with them. And they are focused on our veterans through Vets Helping Vets. So we want to get every one of them we can. So if you know somebody, get them in here. How many have these books? How many have the new ones, the 2012? These books tell you everything I've told you about general discharges, undesirable, and how to get them changed. So you want to look in there if you know somebody that needs the help.
Can I ask a quick question? Your DD 214, can that be registered in more than one courthouse in more than one state?
Yes. It's yours, Ginger.
Okay. This is a very interesting one. Disqualified people who, having been a citizen of the United States, has renounced his citizenship. Can you think of examples of people that have renounced their citizenship and they did something really, really, really awful?
Yeah, James Bond.
And?
Brock does it once a week.
How about people that renounced their citizenship and then shot one of our senators, presidents, vice presidents? Yeah, these are the people that they're really looking at when they change this one. These are people that got so disgusted with the United States that they don't agree with any of our government, they don't agree with their neighbor, they don't agree with anything. And those are the dissidents that they're looking at. Renounced citizenship, someone born in the United States or a naturalized citizen that defects to another country. This does not always mean that they are against the ideals of the United States or its government, but it does create suspicion regarding the person's intentions. It brings up the question of why the person needs a gun. Renounced citizens have targeted and sometimes assassinated our own high-ranking government officials and citizens. Restraining orders. Disqualified persons is subject to a court order that restrains such person from harassing, stalking, or threatening an intimate partner of such person or child of such intimate partner or person, or engaging in other conduct that would place an intimate partner in reasonable fear of bodily injury to the partner or child.
Sis, you can't threaten me anymore.
Well, now she'd have to go to the courthouse and she'd have to file in the county courthouse. But, what did you call her?
Sis?
Yeah.
Is she your sister?
Yes, she is.
Then it wouldn't count against you.
She's not an intimate partner.
Or parent of your child.
Yeah.
You didn't cohabitate with her as an intimate partner.
No, it's from Sweet Home.
It might take us a little while to get that information. Depending on how busy the court is, but eventually, with nothing else as a disqualifier, you would get your gun. And there's more. Oh yeah, you betcha. So, that shall only apply to a court order that A, and this is Oregon standards because we have special hearings. They don't go along with divorce hearings. They don't go along with child support hearings. These are emergency cases. So Juanita beats up Victor this morning and she goes down to the courthouse. Victor doesn't have to be there at the hearing for her to get an emergency ex parte hearing. She could get that order. But it doesn't qualify temporarily unless the judge signs it that he can't have a firearm until we have another hearing. Okay, so there are specifics. Can't just be willy-nilly and, okay, you're done because you have a restraining order. So, A, it was issued after a hearing of which such person received actual notice and at which such person had the opportunity to participate, and includes a finding that such person represents a credible threat to the physical safety of such intimate partner or child. Now, they usually go back a whole year. So, Victor has a problem with Juanita this morning, and Victor and her had issues 6 months ago. The judge can actually take that into consideration. Where the police were called out, where one of them went to the hospital and they have hospital bills or some other proof that that actually occurred. By its terms, explicitly, it prohibits the use, attempted use, or threatened use of physical force against such intimate partner or child that would reasonably be expected to cause bodily injury or fear. Questions?
They're trying to add verbal abuse to that.
Won't work. Know why? It has to have attempted use, use, or threatened use of a firearm. Verbal doesn't cut it.
There's a bill right now in the legislature for that in the state of Oregon.
Well, like I said, things are changing all the time, huh, Victor?
And there's like 6 House bills in there.
But is that federal or is that state?
State.
Won't work. Why?
Then they gotta change all the other ones.
Ninth District Court has already ruled that things like assault for harassment, which is also your verbal abuse, don't meet the federal criteria of having that use of force. Your wife could touch you and it would never hold up as a disqualifier for a federal firearms purchase.
What if the threat is verbal? I'm gonna go get a gun and shoot you. Does it, wow.
If you're in a grade school, you'll be expelled. but-
If you had a gun in your hand and you threatened your wife and said, I'm going to shoot you, and you're convicted of it, and I get your police report that says you did it, a court convicted you of it, then I can disqualify you for life.
But can't you disqualify him? I think what he's asking, and I think where he's going is, I say, Ginger, I'm gonna get my gun
You
and
can
I'm
say
gonna shoot
whatever
you.
you want, Victor.
Now, but the police come out and they arrest me, and you filed for a restraining order because of that, and the judge issued it.
Did they specifically initial the box that says you can't have a firearm, or did they not?
So the judge has to be specific.
And it gets worse because for our particular ex parte orders, they don't have that little box that says you can't have a firearm. The victim or the person that's requesting that restraining order has to check that box that says other and request it.
If I may ask a question, I have a friend whose wife shouldn't even be on the planet. She
Know a
wanted
few
him
of
out
those.
of there, and so she claimed that he assaulted her and brandished a pistol to her head, which he did not do. He wasn't even home that day. Well, he went down the road to jail for 2 years just for that.
He got
And
convicted?
Yes,
Okay.
he went to jail. And he's done for now for the rest of his life, just on hearsay.
Maybe.
What can he do to
We're going to get into that.
create?
We're going to get into that.
He's a heck of a hunter. He can't do
Right.
that.
Because there are some certain time frames after which you've been convicted of a crime. I see it every day where you go to the district attorney's office where that conviction happened and you request an expungement. So everything, and Oregon is awesome in this respect. I have to say that Oregon really is one of the most liberal states in the United States.
Even, excuse me, even for a felony like that? An
What?
expungement?
It could be a felony, it could be a misdemeanor crime of domestic violence, which we're also going to cover in just a minute. He does have the right, after a certain time period covered in the Oregon Constitution, to go back to that court, to that district attorney's office, and to ask to have an expungement set aside, where in Oregon, those records are all destroyed. Unlike some states, Oregon destroys everything. There will be no more court records. There will be no more police reports. There will be no more inquiry to that person's criminal history record, including having it taken off the federal criminal history record. It's a possibility. Yeah, there is hope. There is hope.
So Ginger, what's the difference between sealed and destroyed?
So, juvenile cases, Washington cases are sealed. So basically they say it's vacated or it's dismissed. Unlike Oregon, where we destroy every single record of any of that stuff, it's still available to law enforcement agencies like myself. We can only keep those records for a certain length of time period. So if Washington doesn't show the fact that they've gone to court, that their rights are restored with specific subsections, then we have to delay it, and we have to research it, and we wait, and we wait, and we request, and we request that information. But it can be seen. So if a judge decides that he wants to make a decision on a new case, they still have that available to them. So technically it's not really expunged. Which a lot of people don't understand the difference between an expunge and a set aside. Yeah. And California is one of those states that, say a person was convicted of a felony, and that particular state, they have what they call wobblers. And wobblers are like burglary second degree, where you could have been convicted of a felony or a misdemeanor, and the judge and the prosecuting attorney have the capability of looking at that information and determining, based on past criminal history, whatever the circumstances of the case, whether a firearm was used, to figure out what punishment should fit that crime. So they could decide that you deserve 3 to 10 years in the California penitentiary. Or they could determine that you deserve 30 to 60 days in county jail. Those that are those wobbler charges, the person can go back later and have it reduced to a misdemeanor from a felony, provided the judge, district attorney, and stuff agree. But, again, there's that exception. If the crime was an assault against your spouse, former spouse, or somebody you cohabitated with or had a child with, and they reduce it to a misdemeanor and then dismiss it, that person's rights still never restore a firearm because of the type of crime it was. So, yeah, really gets into, you know, some fine lines of whether it does or it doesn't.
Is there a time period, because you keep talking about the crimes, you know, and it can hold up the investigation or you have to do more research. Is there a time period from the time Stan applies for his gun permit, or I mean, to buy a gun?
To buy a gun.
And you folks have to make a decision. I know it used to be something like 10 days or something like that. If nothing come back to the gun store, they could sell you the gun.
So, federal law says after 3 business days, well, actually, let's back up a little bit. My requirement as a call taker is to let the dealer know within 30 minutes whether we're going to approve, delay, or deny. 30 minutes. We have to get back with something. We have computer issues. We can't get those responses right away. We have to let the dealer know we're having those issues within 30 minutes. No ifs, ands, or buts. That's the law. So we decide that we're going to delay Jim because Jim's got an arrest from 1967 on an AWOL charge on his federal record, and we don't have a disposition. I don't know what his discharge was. I don't know if he got a general court-martial. I have no information. Based on what I know now, it's probably going to take me about 4 weeks to get information back on that. Because we have to contact the feds have to do their investigation and find the information. I tell the dealer we're going to delay for 4 weeks. Now, that's on a Monday. And it's not a holiday. It's not a weekend. The dealer has to wait that full day, 3 additional business days after that. And then, lo and behold, on Friday, the dealer says, the guy's a really good guy. He's been in here 5 years ago, back when you had the information. I know he's going to pass, and he really wants his firearm, and so I'm going to transfer it to him. Okay. You can do that on Friday. But what happens if we were told that the records had been destroyed in a fire in 1974? And it happened. Records were destroyed in 1974 at the housing. But lo and behold, 2 weeks after the transfer of the firearm, we get the records back, and we found it. It was in a different compartment, somewhere off that resource facility, and we get the DD-214 back, and in black and white it shows that Jim had committed this massive assault with a firearm, gained a general court-martial, spent 2 years at Lompoc, and was dishonorably discharged. Disqualified for life. So I pull the file that we started when we delayed him, and I deny it in the computer, and I call the dealer and say, hey, you know, I know you transferred that firearm 2 weeks ago because like we asked you, you called us and said that you had, but we're going to deny this. The dealer has the capability of taking that person to civil court and attempting to get the firearm rights back.
Excuse me, the firearm or the firearm?
Firearm. Yeah, the rights to that firearm possession. I should say.
Or his rights to get.
Yeah, the property. Yeah. We don't have that happen very often. Thank goodness. Things have changed. We used to let alcohol, tobacco, and firearms know every time we had to happen. And every time they had to happen, then the ATF agent would have to go out to the dealer and then find out the address from the dealer. And then they would send one of our troopers or local PDs out with the ATF agent
2 a.m.
at 2 a.m. in the morning or whenever they have the time to knock on the door and try and get it back. So that's what probably would happen. So, do the dealers decide that they want to transfer? Not very often. We have a couple.
So Ginger, if the veteran has a dishonorable discharge for whatever reason, he can't buy a gun, but can he go hunting? Can he possess a gun? Even if it's not his.
No, he shouldn't be. He shouldn't be. But again, that would be something that I would go back to the military on. Because military jurisdiction, military authority. But like Victor said, you're going to have to do something within a short time period of getting that dishonorable discharge. Now, so say we're researching this record, like I said before, and gave the example, and we don't have a disposition on this being absent without authority, and the records truly were destroyed in a fire, and I can't get a hold of them. There's no information. The veteran's lost his DD 214, can't find it. He hasn't registered it with the county courthouse. It happens. It happens. So I get this information back, and it's 3 weeks after we delayed. Jim is one lucky person because I can't prove it. I can't support it. I couldn't say in a court of law, you know, this is what we did. He would be approved. The unfortunate thing about that would be in another 4 years, 6 months, when we have to destroy any research we did, we get to start over. Jim gets redelayed and we start to hunt again. But that would be where I would go with that. What rights do they have to appeal that process? You know, it's going to be one of those things that is up to you as advocates to say, we've got this situation, it does exist. You know, is it right that this person was dishonorably discharged for whatever reason? You know, I'm not sure how they're discharging, say, the lesbians and the gays. Is it right just because you're a lesbian or gay and you don't think the same as I do or feel the same as I do to be disqualified for the rest of your life for that discharge? For the purchase of a firearm that had nothing to do with violence or felony or whatever. We have more of them every day. And it's going to happen for at least one of you advocates. So how do you fight for those rights back? That would be a federal issue and something under military jurisdiction. So, and I'm not a military expert, but I know where to find them in my books and contacts. So. Good question.
Well, does that make, I was thinking more of the officer out in the field. you know, he doesn't know either. But what if you lent that person a gun? I mean, how do you know if he's dishonorable discharge or not? Are you getting involved? Are you involved, you know? Are you committing a felony by lending somebody a rifle?
That would depend on whether or not you knew the facts. You know, how are you going to prove that in a court of law as that officer is concerned that you knew that he was a felon and you let him borrow your firearm?
Yeah, but having a dishonorable discharge doesn't make you a felon, does it? Only if you
Yes,
try
it
to
does.
borrow a gun.
Yes, it does.
A gun.
It eliminates you, even your federal rights to vote.
Really?
Yeah, you can't vote if you have a dishonorable discharge.
Voting, sitting on a jury,
You're stripped of all your rights with a dishonorable discharge. One of the things is like we were talking about outside, Ginger and I, and you asked the question, what if you loan a gun to somebody to go hunting? You don't know. The sad part about it is that you have the state police in her division doing her job. You have the state police that enforces fish and hunting regulations in the mountains, and the right hand don't know what the left hand's doing. They do not communicate. So if you've got a guy and he's a felon, and he goes down here to Weimar and buys a hunting and fishing license, they're gonna sell it to him, just off of his ID. When that state police officer stops him in the woods, he's gonna say, do you have a hunting and fishing license? He's
Yes, I
gonna
do.
look at that, he's gonna, okay, you got a hunting and fishing license, have a good day, have fun, have you seen anything today? Normally, they don't go back and do
To verify,
background
yeah.
checks or verify or anything else. Another issue of that problem is, and the reason they don't do it, but I think, is because, as Ginger said earlier in the class, there is no registry whether you own the gun or not, once you purchased it, other than at the store. Their system is purged of all of that information.
For real?
for real.
So what you think is a registered gun, a long gun sitting in your house, it's not there. There is no record of it, other than the store that sold it to you.
And ATF if they go out of business. But can you imagine how many records, I mean, for me, trying to get old records from courthouses, I have to know when the case was stored, what aisle it's stored in, what box it's under, what file number it's under, which means I gotta go all the way to the court and hope that their microfilm is still working. They can print off the information for me. Heaven above if they changed computer technology and their old system is unavailable to access. That's the type of things that we're dealing with. So, yeah.
Can you explain how long you keep the records? Like if I go to Cabela's, I buy a firearm, how long you keep the records, how long Cabela keeps the records? Some people think that now that that's on record for life. Or you go to a store that's not doing so good and they go out of business, what happens to that record of that firearm you bought there? And
I'm
your
assuming
record?
you're approved because you're saying that you're getting a firearm. Okay. So 10 days after I do your background check,
I just want people to
it
hear.
gets entered in the computer. Yeah. So 10 days after I do that, all my records are gone. Gone. So if that person forgot to write down the serial number, which they shouldn't be, forgot to write down the serial number on your paperwork, or they forgot to write down your driver's license, or the approval number, or who got the approval number, it's gone. It's gone. Now, they have to keep their records for 20 years for denials, and I think 10 years for approvals. If they go out of business, those boxes, those hundreds of boxes that they probably have, go to ATF. Now, what ATF does with them, procedure-wise, I don't know. How they keep them, I don't know. But I do know that a store closing, they have to send those records to them. And I think they only have like 45 days or something to send them. It's pretty fast.
I ran into an issue with explosive permit. I was working, I was certified blaster,
Sure.
blah, blah, blah. So
I would see that.
So I had to have that. Well, I got denied. And, I mean, my job.
Yeah.
So it's-
Yeah, you have the
Right.
clearance,
Right.
you have the certification, you had your prints done. Lo and behold, what's up?
So anyway, I get denied. And they said the reason I got denied was because of an assault. I've never had an assault. So they give me a case number. They actually give me a case number. So I took it to the Springfield Courthouse, the Lane County Courthouse, the Eugene Courthouse. They all did studies, could not find it. Could not find it anywhere. So they all wrote the letter to the state fire marshal and said it doesn't exist. We don't know where you got this records. Well, they never did find out. But anyway, long story short, I was finally approved. But in that process, I found out, like traffic tickets, they might keep them 2 or 3 years. Let's see, you step up to a robbery, they might keep that 10 years. And like the lady said, all of them said, on an assault, like I was supposed to be charged with, 75 years. They keep it that long.
Wow.
And said, so,
Who kept it that long?
Lane County Courthouse.
They might.
Yeah,
They might, because they're a big county.
right,
They have big funding.
right.
They have storage capability. And they have the staff. But I can just about tell you that right now it's 6 weeks to get information from Lynn County.
Oh, I know, it took me here.
6 months from Clackamas.
Yeah.
6 months.
Well, anyway, I got the certified letters from them
Yeah.
and returned it to the state fire marshal, approved, you know, because couldn't find nothing nowhere.
Yeah.
And they said if that was true, if Mr. Manning was convicted of that, we would have the records on file today.
Yeah, so that's the problem, isn't it? Documentation. You know, can you prove it, can you not prove it? Was there a conviction, was there not a conviction?
That's why I keep that letter from the county.
Yes. You know, what I would do is I would frame that sucker.
Yeah.
That was gonna be one of my
Go to
questions.
the courthouse.
In Lynn County, because of the cutbacks that we've had, and going from 40 personnel at the Lynn County Courthouse to 29 people to work the cases and to help research, what is the time frame with Lynn County? Like if you're trying to get some information about,
So what happens is some counties are very, very friendly. Some I can call up and say, hey, I'm doing this background check. I don't have a disposition for this case. I don't have a case number. Can you look this up for me and let me know what's going on? If you have a disposition for this case that we never received, because we're the holder of all those records. We're the master files. Can you send it to me so that I can get this poor guy's background check updated? Can I get this, you know, disposition of dismissal after 20 years that should have been entered 6 months after the case started? Put on this person's record so we don't have to do this again. Sometimes they'll send it to me. And I can get that person's record updated that day. It will never be questioned again. We're done. 5 years from now, 10 years from now, 20 years from now, that disposition stays on that criminal history record. The person doesn't have to worry about it. Anybody else who requested that information, it would show that it was dismissed. We're done.
You know, I think a lot of these guys in here, because they keep asking about time frame in the counties and things like that, you say that
There's
your-
no standard.
Your office is to get back within 30 minutes for approval. What is, or did-
Approval delay denied.
Right, and in that, other than approval, what is the flag that comes up not to get the approval, would, let's say, would go into a deferral? What kind of flags would you get?
No dispositions, convictions of possible domestic violence, domestic violence, no information from the DD 214 on the federal as far as what happened with discharges, what kind of court martial was received, possible juvenile domestic violence cases like under our Measure 11s. Those can't be destroyed. Probations, arrests within the last 5 years with no dispositions.
And those are the records you say you can get within 30 minutes?
Those are the records we can't get within 30 minutes.
Yeah, but I mean-
A delay only happens when we can't get them within that 30-minute time
Well, I
period.
guess what I'm asking is, you know, I'm hearing what you're saying there, that you can't get it. But what is the flag that says there could be something out there to that effect?
Okay, so what happens is, like I said earlier, I take the information from the dealer as far as name of the purchaser, the information about the firearm. And we've had upgrades, so now we're web live. So that will help some people with the wait. But so I enter that information in the computer. We have information coming back with, I think we're at 7 different areas that we request information from, feds and Oregon. And so all these boxes on my computer are either what we call black checked, there's no record, or they come up with a red box and no check, which tells me to look in specific areas for specific records. Then I request those records and the information comes up as Oregon criminal history, federal records, other state records, and so I just work through them one at a time. But like I said, normally still within 3 minutes we're getting approvals. So that's pretty fast. Some of them may take 6-7 minutes if they've been arrested in 12 different states, have an FBI record, a stolen gun with a serial number of none that was a Remington from 1972 and has 50 hits from 50 different organizations.
What's the longest period that might be traceable back to a serial number?
Again, you're coming up with problems of how long those agencies have to keep their information. I had one a couple of weeks ago. It was back when they had that snowstorm back east, right? Yeah, it wasn't back east, but it was Utah. Utah, 1949. Stolen firearm. Matches my make, my model, my serial, but it's a 30-06. I know it's not a shotgun pump, and I know that there are 3 different subsections of that model that it might not be my gun. It's blowing snowstorm there. I'm on the phone. I have a person on hold because the dealer's trying to sell this firearm that was from a pawn shop. And I have to verify this isn't my stolen gun before I allow it to leave the pawn store. It's Friday. It's 3:30 in the afternoon. I know I'm pushing it to get somebody on the other end that deals with entering stolen firearms on the phone. Being Friday, their court records, their evidence tech, the technician that enters those and retrieves those from the record files, probably isn't working that day because they've had budget cuts. I managed to get a sergeant that had called in 10 different people to her agency that day to cover the roads. Her and one other person are stuck in the office. The records clerk is at home And she called that records clerk for me because I had this person waiting, and it was a big deal to me to get that information to them. 15-minute turnaround time. She pulled the file. The file said that it had been updated 2 days before that. And 2 days before that, they found out records are gone. It's on an old microfiche machine that they can't get the records off of, and they can't view, can't support. It should have been deleted from the system. That is a 1 in a million shot, let me tell you, to get information that fast. But, yeah, we do what we can. Yeah.
So did the guy buy it?
Yeah, he bought it, went home with it. Yep. Okay, so we were talking about restraining orders. Let's go to that domestic violence conviction stuff. First of all, we're back to this definition. Intimate partner means with respect to a person, the spouse, former spouse, an individual who is a parent of a child of the person, and an individual who cohabitates or has cohabitated with the person based on those intimate partner types of definitions. So, your daughter and her boyfriend are having intercourse. They get into a mess. He beats up her, she beats up him. We have a conviction on one or the other. Is it a lifetime disqualifier? Because if she or he is living in your house and the other intimate partner that they're sleeping with is in a different home or place that residence that they live in, and they've never lived together as husband and wife type of scenarios, it won't count. But if it's an assault that happened within the last 4 years and they were convicted of it, and it was Oregon, they're still disqualified for 4 years from the conviction date. So again, we're talking term limits here of when convictions do and don't. Okay? So, has to be that qualifying relationship. Has to have a conviction. And all those exceptions. Domestic violence convictions has to have an element of the use or attempted use of physical force or the threatened use of a deadly weapon committed by current or former spouse, parent, or guardian of the victim, by a person with whom the victim shares a child in common, by a person who is cohabitating with or has cohabitated with the victim as a spouse, parent, or guardian. Okay, this brings up another question. The child of a person hits someone that is parent. They're convicted of it. Is it a lifetime disqualifier? Does it meet that relationship requirement? Because it's child to parent. The only time that would meet is if the guardian was elderly or physically handicapped, mentally challenged, and that child has a court order that says they're a guardian. In that respect, the relationships are flipped. It meets as a possible MCDV disqualifier for life. Okay, so either one of those relationships or court ordered to meet based on those qualifications. Okay, so has to be parent on child or those intimate partners. But the person shall not be considered to have been convicted of such an offense for purposes of this chapter unless the person was represented by counsel in the case or knowingly and intelligently waived the right to counsel, and in the case of a prosecution for an offense described in this paragraph of which a person was entitled to a jury in the jurisdiction in which the case was tried, either the case was tried by a jury or the person waives their right to have a jury trial. A person shall not be considered to have been convicted for the purpose of this chapter if the conviction has been expunged or set aside, or is an offense for which the person has been pardoned, or has had civil rights restored if the law of the applicable jurisdiction provides for the loss of civil rights, voting, and jury, and holding office under such an offense, unless the pardon, expungement, or restoration of civil rights expressly provides that the person still cannot ship, transport, possess, or receive firearms. So you could still technically get those rights to vote, hold office, or sit on a jury restored and still not have your firearms rights restored if the law states you can't have it. So this is one of those when we were talking about California and reducing those convictions and then setting it aside and still not having firearms rights based on that law. So, yes, there's still hope for your case.
Just what I'm thinking about.
Yeah. Considering it, if it's an Oregon case, there's still hope. Yeah. So, here we go. Next set.
Take 5 minutes?
Yeah,
Or
I
we
think
want
so.
to 10 after 12?
Yeah.
And
Time
we'll
for
come
some
in.
people to stand and stretch.
Yeah.
Okay, so why are they, we always get the they or you, always, I'm not the they and I'm not the you, thank you. Why are they, federal and or states, requiring background checks for purchases of firearms? On March 12, 2002, the senseless shooting which took the lives of a priest and a parishioner at the Our Lady of Peace Church in Lynbrook, New York, brought attention to the need to improve information sharing that would enable federal and state law enforcement agencies to conduct a complete background check on a potential firearm purchaser. Sorry, my other training just kicked into me. Anyone who has a problem with someone in their family being killed with a firearm or anything else that has some emotional stress issues still in dealing with that? No? Okay. Sorry. I'm currently part of a committee that, I'm in active training to become a crisis intervention response team member. So, learning sense and sensibilities, some common sense, and so I should have asked that beforehand, but it's one of those things, we do no harm, and so I should have asked.
Don't worry, nobody in here has common sense anyway.
Yeah, well.
Had it
Common
once,
order.
left it once.
But you know, I might have had to do
Or
it.
otherwise.
I might have had to do a defusing or a debriefing before I left here. Okay, so it became obvious that we needed to improve our information sharing, and that it would enable federal and state law enforcement agencies to conduct a complete background check on a potential firearm purchaser. The man who committed this double murder had a prior disqualifying mental health commitment and a restraining order against him, but passed a Brady background check because National Instant Check System, I'm a firearms instant check system person, you have a federal and you have state points of contact. So this was the federal point of contact that did not have the necessary information to determine that he was ineligible to purchase a firearm under federal or state law. On April 16th, 2007, a student with a history of mental illness at the Virginia Polytechnic Institute and State University shot to death 32 students and faculty members, wounded 17 more, and then took his own life. The shooting, at that time, the deadliest campus shooting in United States history, renewed the need to improve information sharing that would enable us to do the complete background checks. In his case, in spite of a proven history of mental illness, the shooter was able to purchase the 2 firearms used in the shooting. Improved coordination between state and federal authorities could have ensured that the shooter's disqualifying mental health information was available to the National Instant Check System. So this brings up another piece of that mental defective, incompetent. Remember we talked earlier about it had to be a judge's order or committee ruling that committed the person to the mental institution? Updates to the federal law also state outpatient mental health ordered. If a judge says, well, you know, we think you're competent enough to be in everyday life, but we're requiring you, we're committing you to outpatient treatment, that's a disqualifier too. They didn't understand, it wasn't obvious somewhere to somebody to say a judge has committed him to outpatient treatment. He should be disqualified. It should be in the national files to say and flag him that he should have been disqualified. So, improvements and updates.
If this is not judge ordered, like a person goes for marital counseling or depression counseling, that's self-ordered?
Voluntary. It's all voluntary. Yeah. These disqualifiers only exist because it's involuntary commitment by a judge or committee. Yeah. And I wasn't going to talk about this, but
Talk about
the
it.
new House bill proposing the whole PTSD thing, you know, and I just see some real issues for us in the future.
And where were you looking at?
Because now you're talking a Veterans Administration committee determining what is that commitment, what's not that commitment. So.
Can I comment on that?
Mm-hmm.
The VA is in the process. We should know in April, I'll have the new law books here and the code books. The doctors are actually using for their codes. Under the PTSD Act right now, it is listed under code for mental disorder. They're in the process of working on changing that. And then if it comes out into the new code, it will no longer be PTSD.
It will be PTS under a new code, post-traumatic stress, which I will
No disorder.
which takes it away from the mental condition. And the VA is working on that coding right now, and if the new coding comes out, that's what the doctors will be using. Right now, I do know because my shrink that I voluntarily go see at the VA, she has already told me that if you choose to come in there for counseling for post-traumatic stress, I know as far as Portland goes, they are not sold on this being the Gestapo for the new Obamacare medical plan, and they will not report under the new law of the medical plan. And that's one of the reasons they're in the process of changing the federal coding from PTSD to PTS.
And it's actually from disorder to, I understand that, but it takes the stigma, as it were, of disorder to condition.
Yeah. Disorders and syndromes to a condition.
So if
So
this coding
temporary and
changes,
treatable, basically, is what it turns into.
if this coding changes under the federal law, it'll come out in the books in April. That's the class we'll be having from the mental health division from Portland in April. She's coming down. She's the head gal down there too. I pick on all the head gals.
I'm not a head gal. I'm just line staff. I just know one.
They give us lots of information. She'll be here in April and talking about that, what the new laws are as far as the PTSD, the federal law, including the Obama medical plan and how it's all fitting in. Because right now, I've also been told by Oregon Department of Veterans Affairs that their new system that the feds are wanting to go to, Oregon Department of Veterans Affairs has already told it, we will not honor your program because you have not
Done your
fulfilled your
homework.
part of the law, and it is not constitutional, and we will not report under that fact. In other words, they're trying to push it all under the Obama medical plan. We are going to let the doctors and the psychologists be our police. And if they report to us, that's all we need. And these doctors, as far as the VA system are going right now, are not going to adhere to it. What the civilian doctors do, I don't know.
Well, and again, anytime they do those changes in the laws, one, they should be talking to somebody who knows what the heck they know. You know. And then we all know the cases of all of those possibilities that we never thought of when we did it. You know. In which case, they should always have an appeal process in place before they establish it. And everybody should know that it exists. And everybody should be trained on it. Including the people that are trying to do the appeals that don't know that that's part of their job.
And they're using a lot of different scenarios. I had a colonel call me from Salem, that's just in the process of being administratively separated from the military. He has spent 3 tours in Afghanistan and 1 in Iraq. And he called us for our assistance in helping him with an appeal with the military because he's fighting to stay in. He's got 15 years in. He's a colonel. His unit was dispatched in February back to Afghanistan. He was separated from his unit and was not allowed to go back. Because after he come back the last time, he was unable to sleep. So he went to the VA hospital and he got medication to help him
Voluntarily?
sleep. Voluntarily, under the Department of Defense. See, here we go, we're back to the feds. Under the Department of Defense, they found him broke. That That was the word they used. He was broke. So therefore, he could no longer, under their scenario, carry a firearm. Because
Without a firearm, you can't be exempt.
and so therefore, because he can't do his job, he can't carry his firearm, he's no longer equipped to be a soldier in the military. He's broke. So they want to administratively separate. And so he's appealing it, he's fighting it. We've been working on it with him, and us and Tom Mann from Oregon Department of Veterans Affairs. But this is a scenario that's going on pretty regular right now in the military. And if they can push that long and hard enough, that again is going to just muddy the water for the job she does. Because here they have the Department of Defense, a federal agency, saying, oh no, we wouldn't allow him to have a fire gun. Some of this come about because of that psychiatrist down in Texas that decided to go on a rampage and start blowing soldiers away. And they're just figuring out ways that they can usurp the laws and insert new codes. So we got to watch them. They're going to change rapidly in the next 3 years.
But Victor, you know, all these laws won't mean anything if the Department of Homeland Security decides to enact something through, what, martial law or civil defense, then all that stuff falls under their umbrella.
And it falls under their umbrella, but you got to remember, here we go. We reverse back to the Second Amendment. We do have the right to form militias. Now, don't believe what always you read in the federal government, because the federal government's trying to convince everybody that your state National Guards are your state militias. And they are not your state militias. We as people in our communities that come together have the right that when the federal...
Volunteering to be part of your protection.
That's right.
But the DHS has come out and made returning veterans classified them as terrorists.
That's right.
I know you said you were heading that way, and I was wondering why you were going to the DHS. Is that a state police thing?
No, personal choice. Personal choice. So I grew up, obviously, living in Oregon, in a family of hunters, fishers. My first thought I can remember was that I wanted to be an attorney that sued bad attorneys. You know? I wanted to be an attorney that sued bad attorneys.
Yeah, you've been busy.
You know, I've always had that civil worker mindset. And you know, always been for the underdog. And while I enforce the laws, I don't make the laws. I don't necessarily have to agree with how they're being instituted or what's happening with them. You know, we have plenty of room to question what's happening. We have plenty of room with people like all of you to have input with the people that make the laws, the people that enforce the laws, to make some of those changes happen. For me, I chose a harder degree to get because I had to go through special committee approval and had to agree to do this whole long thesis. And my thesis I chose is called Across the Deep. And it's not a body of water. It's the human mind and condition, and how someone that you would never imagine could have issues. They're the person that goes to work every day, the person that you always rely on, the person that's always strong, can suddenly become the weakest puddle that has no strength in them. How can a person who is strong still have an addiction to gambling that they can't overcome? How is a person that is that strong have an addiction to drugs that they can't overcome? We truly are a strange creature, and you wouldn't think so, but most of our terrorists and terrorist organizations, the heads of their organizations are very smart, well educated, come from probably middle class families to upper class families. They know politics. They're scary because they create leadership. People want to follow them because they don't agree necessarily with things that are happening. They want to change it. The people that they're talking to feel the same way. Most of the time their followers have not been treated very well by society in general or at all. And so that's where my thesis kind of fits in, is how can we go there? What's not right about what we're doing that we're not all pulling together to stand up for basic rights? And so that's why I chose Department of Homeland. Makes sense?
We need to go back to background check.
Yeah, because otherwise we're going to be here all day.
Moving right along.
We're in Victor's bunker. Okay. So, now, why am I being delayed?
Because Ginger won't get up and put her signature on my paper.
So, the primary cause of delay in National Instant Check System background checks, and I do have to also admit in state level to the firearms instant check systems, is A, updates in available state criminal deposition records, and B, automated access to information concerning persons prohibited from possessing or receiving a firearm because of mental illness, restraining orders, or misdemeanor convictions for domestic violence. 6, automated access to this information can be improved by and is being improved by making such information available to NICS in a usable format. We fall under that. We are a state ran system under federal guidelines. So yes, we're Oregon State. Yes, we make our determination. And yes, we're still stuck under federal guidelines.
Is there any portion of the federal guidelines the state don't agree with and doesn't follow?
I wish I could say yes. I really wish I could say yes. Because I would seriously question following our 9th District Court of Appeals. Like I said earlier, there are some cases where we clearly have that a child was beaten within an inch of its life, and because we're willing to make deals and not put it all on paper, they are convicted of physical harassment. Because it didn't state that they hit, punched, kicked their child, just that it was a physical touch, I have to approve that background, and that just kind of infuriates me. So, I do whatever I can when I can to make sure that we're doing everything possible to, one, push that envelope, to make sure that people that should be approved are approved, and that people that clearly are a danger to society and their children specifically get the disqualification on the wall.
Which one do you got?
How much?
You want to go in or you want to have pizza? Let me finish.
How about if they eat and have
They
pizza?
eat
Yeah. Yeah.
and talk at the same time.
Yeah, you can do that.
Everybody go grab your pizza. I'm gonna ask Dave if he'll bless the food. Again, if you know somebody looking for a job in those fields that I told you about, get them over here, get their resumes in, let's get them out there and let's get them to work. If they're veterans, we want to get them to work. Sometime early next week, the technicians are telling me they will have the computers up and running. And once the floor is laid out here, the printers and copiers and all that will be in. They're gonna network them right into the systems. So you'll be able to come here and do your research if you want to for your veterans benefits, your records, anything you need to get your benefits from the VA. It'll be online here. Forms that you need, you'll be able to pull them up here. We'll also have volunteers with computer experience and background here periodically throughout the week. They're coming in different days and they'll man the office here so they can help you stream through the VA system.
It would probably help too, wouldn't it, to call ahead and see if there's somebody
Yeah,
here at that.
because we do have volunteers now that have signed up for that. Also, the 23rd of this month, we are going to have open house. We're going to have pizza from noon to 3. Kind of come in and meet the advocates and meet. We're going to try to get as many as, if we can, all of our advocates here and our board of directors, so you have a chance to meet them, all of them, and get acquainted with them and learn a little more about what we are here for. It's not just to be here and talk gun classes, but we do a lot for veterans in the communities and throughout the state, from building ramps. We go in and remodify homes. We do take volunteers. We try to abuse anybody and everybody that will allow us to do it.
True story.
As Larry and Rick says, it's voluntold by Vic. We do have, so everybody knows, back there on the table, I think they're underneath, it might be underneath,
I got it here.
there are membership applications. There's no dues to be paid. Everybody that wants to sign up and be a volunteer, we want you to sign up. We want to get you into our database. You need to fill one of those out.
Oh, another one?
You haven't filled that one out. This is our actual now official membership form. There is no dues. You just got to have heart and want to help another veteran or a veteran's family. Be available. We have several women veterans starting to come into the program, and also we're looking for women that, no you don't. We're looking for women that want to assist. We have women veterans coming home. Again, they're coming home with PTS, post-traumatic stress. They're coming back from the wars. And they've seen a lot of things, a lot of issues, and sometimes it's just nice to have women that'll say, I'll volunteer. They come here to talk to me, and a lot of women, I have a policy, I don't meet with a woman veteran unless there's another woman present. Because it's just a policy that I have. And some of these women veterans all know Mom back there, as they call her, and they come and talk to her and they visit with her, and she's a wonderful advocate for them to talk to. And so we want women that are going to be available. Some of these may need to call somebody, go out and have coffee with them, just somebody they can talk to. I was just told the other day about a veteran coming home. His wife has just totally reserved. She doesn't leave her home. She won't even leave her house. And he's going to try to get her involved, and Want to get her up to meet a few of the women that we have in the organization and get her going. August 17th. August 17th, everybody needs to put that on their calendar because that is our 6th annual Vets Helping Vets HQ picnic. And we have a good time. We honor all of our soldiers, our fallen. We do a bell ringing. We do a kind of a memorial for all of them and remember them. Because as it says, we won't forget. They went over, they served, they come back with a flag draped over them. They gave their life for what they believed in, and that was what we believe in is the Constitution of the United States. That's what we protect. That's the rights and reserves that we carry. So we want to continue that on, and part of it is coming together through our annual picnic so that we can, 1, fellowship, 2, we can have a good time, 3, we eat and eat and eat. And Barack up here, bless him, that guy gets busy and he cooks and he cooks and he cooks. We do a big barbecue, we barbecue a whole pig, we do turkeys, we do salmon, we do hot dogs, we do everything. It's everybody brings a dish and we put it out there and we have a big spread.
Where and what time?
Huh?
Where and
Where
what
and
time?
what time?
It's going to start at 10 o'clock on Saturday, the August 17th, at Timberland Park out here. We've got it reserved. And we're going to be looking for people that would come up on Friday and help set up. So we're going to set the stage up. We'll have a band playing. I haven't made any reservations for dunk tanks.
We'll get you one.
But Pat, some of you know, Pat Bailey is chairing the picnic this year, and she's going to be looking for volunteers that will assist in helping with the picnic and getting it set up and put together. She's been, if you know businesses that would like to donate to help raise money for the Vets Helping Vets HQ and to continue our programs in doing projects for our veterans, we appreciate it. Last year we had a half a pig donated. We had 2 complete house painting jobs donated, from paint to labor. We had a lot of small things donated. We had a quilt donated, specific to Vets Helping Vets HQ. And we raised some good money last year to help our organization. One of the things is people sometimes wonder about the budget. The budget's always will be posted now on the bulletin board back there. We hide nothing. It's out there. It's for anybody to see that's part of our organization. And we just need everybody to step up because we took an oath when we went in the military, every one of us, that we would cover our brothers and sisters' back. We'd take care of their six as we knew it in the military. And that's what, don't believe it was just 4 years or 10 years or 20 years in the military. I think that was an oath we took, and it was for life. So we take care of each other. There's nobody out here that's going to do it better than one vet helping another vet, or one vet's family helping another vet's family. So let's step up, let's make it happen. If you know a vet out there that needs help, get them in here to one of us, get them to, we have advocates all over the state, and we can get in touch with one of our advocates. So it's really important that we keep moving forward, because that's how they're going to get the help. And some of you already know how tough it is to work through the VA system. It's getting tougher every day. As I told you, the education program's just been cut in the Marine Corps and the National Guard. The other militaries we haven't heard about, branches, in the last week, but I'm sure it's coming. So we got a lot of kids coming home. These kids are going to have a lot of issues, from marriage to trying to fit back in. I'm trying to get businesses to commit to start hiring our veterans, because we're looking at 35,000 veterans coming home this year to Oregon. And these young men and women are going to need jobs. And if we can get every business to commit to hire one veteran this year, we can succeed in putting our veterans back to work. And so all we need is a commitment to hire one veteran, and we can make it a success. So anyway, I'm going to let Ginger finish up. She's got a little more for us, and then all of you got your questions. I know I've seen him writing 14 pages of them.
A quick question?
The training today is going to be on the website. You want to mention that?
And you can go on to vetshelpingvetshq.com, and this training course will be on the web page. Some of you have already signed up for a CD, and there'll be others. The CDs are $6. He's got a clipboard back here if you want to sign up for a CD. And $1 goes to Vets Helping Vets. The other $5 go to Dave for the purchase of the CDs, to burn them, get them set up and everything. So anyway, get your orders in. If you know somebody that could benefit from the class, buy them a CD and give it to them for their birthday.
Or Christmas?
Or Christmas.
Or Easter?
Thank you. Look good in an Easter basket.
St. Patrick's.
So it's back to Ginger.
All right. So, all these automations and improvements that we've been talking about, grant money that's available to agencies like mine that we're requesting, will all help to shorten the time that law-abiding gun purchasers have to wait in order to get their firearms. So I'm excited. Okay, some of the big questions. Restoral of firearms rights. I know we talked a little bit about this. Sometimes it's presidential pardons. I know that for people that avoided selective service acts, President Ford and President Carter actually did a blanket pardon for those selective service people. And I didn't know that. I thought they had a list of people that had been pardoned. Imagine my surprise when I asked them and they said, no, there's no list. It's just the 2 presidents, and they pardoned people for that. Governor's pardons. Sometimes a governor's pardon is enough to restore those rights. It's not that way in all states, so again, we're at the complexity of which states allow that, which states don't. Sometimes. It depends on what it's for. Parole board determinations, believe it or not. Again, we're back to a committee that determines whether or not a person should have their rights back. They go to prison for whatever reason they went to prison, and in some states, that parole board actually has to determine whether or not they can be approved to carry a firearm, even though all of their other rights may or may not have been restored. Expungements, set-asides, we've talked about how different states run those differently. For some expungements, like Oregon, our wonderful Oregon, expungements means it's gone. It's totally gone, every trace of it. For others, they're called set-asides or dismissals. Sometimes those set-asides and dismissals restore rights, sometimes they don't. Here's one we haven't talked about necessarily for Oregon. This is for felony convictions. Felony convictions. We may want to also look at going back to the court of conviction and requesting a reduction from a felony to a misdemeanor. Important words. Nunc pro tunc means back to the very beginning. If that's reduced back to the time that the conviction happened, you no longer have a felony, now you have a misdemeanor. Misdemeanors do not disqualify people in those circumstances. Unless it was, of course, a domestic abuse case. Then it wouldn't help you.
Oh, quit writing that.
But you might have somebody else that you have in mind.
Gary, you're gonna have to quit abusing Beth.
Yeah.
I ain't worried about it, she got a golf club.
Then we have some states where after they've been convicted, they do their time in prison or jail, they've paid all their fines, they've done their community service, and that state's constitution automatically restores their rights. Idaho. Felonies. So remember, it's all about jurisdiction and authority. Who's got the jurisdiction? Who's got the authority to be able to do them? So we know that making sure that information that's complete helps us. Denials appeals are completed at the jurisdiction level where the conviction occurred. So if you want to appeal a federal decision, don't take it to state circuit court. Improvements have been made for Oregon specifically. It used to be for Oregon that you had to go back to the circuit court or the district court in the county where you were convicted. Trying to make it easier, you can go to the district court / circuit court of the county you're residing in and request it. But don't go to municipal court on a misdemeanor to try and get an expungement done for a felony at circuit court level. That won't happen. So we can appeal decisions. My suggestion is, if you're not sure what's on your record, you've been convicted of something or even arrested of something in the past, go to the state or whoever holds the records and request a copy of what that record has. You may be surprised that somebody else's record got put on yours, or what you thought was a dismissal never showed up. Makes a good point, doesn't it? You went through that just recently with one of my family members. Always keep a copy of your military, personnel, medical records, and DD-214 or other discharge paperwork. Remember to document, document, document. Challenges to accuracy of criminal history records. You might have things like identity theft, somebody stole the name, date of birth, social security, they get arrested for a charge, they use that name, that date of birth, lo and behold, the person's information is attached to their criminal history record. It can be fixed, but you have to know about it and know where to go. The place for court records is usually held by the original courts, or in some states it may be the arresting agency. So if you're from someplace other than Oregon, then that's where I would go for those records. Federal government has what they call a UPIN. It's a unique personal identification number. And in the instances where a record can't be fixed, ID theft, and the person, whenever they go to purchase a firearm, we make the dealer send prints in every time. Those only happen when you have at least one other person using that person's information and they have either a possible disqualifier or a disqualifier. They can go to the federal National Instant Check System and request those UPINs. So only that person gets that specific unique personal number. And when they call us, they can give us that number and we can skip having to send the prints. We can verify it probably within 5 to 6 minutes and they can be on their way with their firearm.
Excuse me, how did you get this number again?
The unique personal identification number? Okay. So what happens is they get delayed or denied for whatever reason. They call, they challenge their delay, their denial. We either support the denial or we overturn it if it was done incorrectly.
You denial in any sense.
Yeah. Then what happens is the person's fingerprints are put on a fingerprint card. Unfortunately, they only do these by snail mail. Takes a while. Last I heard, they were like 6 months. But eventually, it does get resolved. They compare. We do everything by fingerprints. So they compare every single arrest that was done with fingerprints for that person. So they can look at those and go, yes, that is that person. No, that's not that person. If it's not the person, they're not disqualified and shouldn't be, they create that unique personal identification number. Passwords. Passwords can be issued by local police departments, local sheriff's office. If a person's lost their ID, lost their credit debit cards, there's some concern about maybe their twin brother or twin sister borrowed their identification. The sheriff's office has already proven that. Local police department are concerned that that person's driver's license or other identifying information, concealed handgun license, things like that, are being used by somebody else. They can create a password. They can enter that password into the system. And when we have those backgrounds, it will flash up and say, this password has been issued by this agency. Do not mistake them for the other person. We ask that password. If they know that password, then we can go ahead and proceed with the firearm. Believe it or not, states and courts may or may not charge a fee for copies of criminal history records. My best advice would be to Google that agency. Things like Lynn County Courts, those usually on their website, they give different pages. It could be contact. Those contacts are usually an administrative person that deals with most of those questions, can answer if there's a fee, what they do, how they do it, and sometimes even they actually list the fees. I know that Lynn County Circuit Court on their website lists the fees that they have for making copies. If you're not a veteran looking for your copy of your DD 214, which is free, then you can find that out there. And so Oregon State Police actually has a division, regulatory and criminal history records. There is a fee charged to get a copy of your own record. I'm not sure exactly how much that is, but I think it requires a copy of your fingerprints and the fee. And then they will send it to you in the mail. That's also available on the website, OregonStatePolice.gov. And then we come to firearms tracing. This is the one that everybody's interested in. So this is the Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms National Tracing Center. What is it? Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives, ATF, National Tracing Center, the NTC, is the only, I repeat, the only organization authorized to trace United States and foreign manufactured firearms for international, federal, state, and local law enforcement agencies. Its purpose is to provide investigative leads in the fight against violent crime and terrorism and to enhance public safety. Firearms tracing is a systemic tracking of the movement of a firearm. I know this question is going to come up, so here we go. Recovered by law enforcement officials from its first sale by the manufacturer or importer through the distribution chain, wholesaler, retailer, to the first retail purchaser. Comprehensive firearms tracing is the routine tracing of every crime gun recovered within a geographic area or specific law enforcement jurisdiction. Why trace firearms? To link a suspect to a firearm in a criminal investigation, to identify potential traffickers, whether licensed or unlicensed sellers. When sufficiently comprehensive tracing is undertaken by a given community to detect in-state, interstate, and international patterns in the sources and kinds of crime guns. Also, the important one, to return stolen firearms to their original owners. Those are voluntary reporting of stolen or lost firearms to local law enforcement agencies.
Question. So if I buy a new firearm that's registered with the seller from the store, and I sell it to a friend who sells it to a friend who sells it to a friend that had it stolen, a crime was committed, they found the firearm at the scene, they'll take that number and come back to me because I bought it. Is that correct?
And then you'll say, yep, I sold that thing in such and such and such and such, and my suggestion is bill of sale, always. And then you can say, I sold that gun in 1999 to such and such and no longer have it. And then they will go to name of such and such, and that's the only way they're going to be able to go from one place to another.
It may end there because he didn't know that they keep on.
Yeah. So I had an interesting case where someone called because the gun was pawned. Gun came up stolen. Turned out it was listed as stolen in 1976, I think. And what happened was two neighbors had a problem with each other. One sold it to the other at some point. The daughter of one of the gentlemen pawned it, went to get it back. Gun came up stolen. I dispatched and had it taken into evidence. And the officer that had been dispatched called me back and said, "You won't believe this." I said, "Try me." He said, the two had been friends and neighbors since like 1954. Both gentlemen are deceased. They had a fight back in 1977. The one hadn't paid the guy all that he owed him for the firearm, so the other gentleman listed it as lost or stolen. And I said, well, good luck with that. So, So it's never too old and it's never too new, and yes, they could verify the information on that one. They could get a hold of their microfilm. So
What did they find out about it, you know? As a result of
I never did. I never did find out. I'm sure that it was probably only like $20 or $25 that was owed, and she probably just paid off the daughter of the other one. But yeah. But what a mess. So here's a listing of some of the websites I've used and some of the statutes we've used. These particular ones were all federal. There are a couple of Oregon disqualifiers that I want to cover that are different than the ones that we used at the federal level. Federal is usually the guidelines for almost all laws. States that do not have laws that they create on their own and put into law, they follow the federal. The only way to know that is to go to your Oregon state websites and request the laws. If those laws are based on federal, or if municipal codes are based on state, they will either not have a listing for those, or they will specifically state, as in state constitution law blah blah blah, and they'll give you those specific statutes. Okay, so to those two Oregon state specific disqualifiers, we have probation. Probation automatically covers no firearms while you're on probation. For some reason, probation officers don't like to go out and have people that are on probation have firearms.
Well, that's no fair.
Yeah, so that's part of the Oregon law. Now, if the judge decides that the person that's on probation, you're going to want to write this down, should be allowed to have firearms, the specific section is L. They need to specifically state section L of the probation is to be deleted. That's the one that says you may not have firearms or exotic animals.
My wife's got me.
How do you get those two in the same category?
When they wrote the law in the Oregon Constitution and that legislative piece, they didn't want people to have exotic animals, dangerous weapons, or firearms.
Is this like a killer bee or a killer?
I would imagine it's probably like boa constrictors, pumas,
Is it something that
alligators, or used for defense. Yeah, like
You can't have your attack rattlesnake.
like the man that made the concrete moat in his basement to protect his marijuana plants, and it was filled with alligators and crocodiles.
Oregon?
I don't think so. I could be wrong. We do some strange stuff like that. I'm sure you can Google it. You'll find it. What was... so, this one. There are 5 misdemeanors that if you are convicted as a misdemeanor, been convicted or found not guilty by reason of insanity during the previous 4 years, disqualify you 4 years from the date of conviction. This one is going to be number 6 on your unlawful to sell or dispose of handout. They are assault 4th degree, menacing, recklessly endangering, strangulation, and intimidation in the second degree. Must be misdemeanors, must be convictions. Pre-trials for misdemeanors, unless you have something else going on there, don't count. And that's it. Questions?
What was the last one?
Oh, intimidation, second degree. That one's on your hand.
Okay.
Yep. Other than that, Oregon pretty much follows federal law, so.
Any questions? Well, that answers all
Anyone?
the questions.
Anyway, I was gonna say, shocker.
I'd like to talk more about exotic animals.
Google it.
Why does everybody go after Utah and Seal Terry?
I have no idea.
Reciprocity.
Yeah, more states were on our.
Yeah. And the laws are basically the same as Oregon. They have better, home invasion laws, but you can do.
Yeah,
than
protection.
Oregon, but Oregon is more liberal on that than actually Utah is, but I like their laws better.
Yeah, and see, we're kind of like that too.
Pardon?
We're kind of like that too.
We are. One
Yeah,
of the
whatever's
liberal
stronger or more liberal, you like to go with.
Depends on which one you give it.
Yeah. Depends on which side of the aisle you're on too.
There's 30-some states, 37, I think, with Utah reciprocity. And 2 that don't have any type of reciprocity, or even for their own folks, is Illinois, DC, and I think North or South Carolina.
Yeah. Illinois is one of the few states that you actually have to have a firearms owner identification card to be able to purchase. Hawaii, no matter where you purchase in the United States, once you come home, you have to register your firearm. So. Alaska, you can pretty much do just about what you want to. Except drink on the reservations.
Yeah.
Yeah, Alaska Troopers on Netflix, if you have it. I highly recommend it. It's a great watch.
I would say one of the guys I know, he's a gunsmith, sent me a picture of this woman in a store in Alaska, the handgun right on her hip.
Yeah. Well, you know, when the polar bears come into town and they want to take your children, you might want to have a gun.
Yeah. It was a good sized one too, so
For the
yeah.
time of the year, that's common. I used to live there for a number of years.
Yeah.
It's very common.
Anything else? Anything?
Well, I think Ginger did a great job. Let's give her a hand.
Thank you, Missy.
She took her day off from work to come here and do this.
Well, thank you very much.
And, you know, she's very much involved and wants to do what she can for the veterans. And she's always been there. Like she said, I met her when her brother was having issues with his VA, and he come to me, and Ginger was kind of his right hand.
And left too.
And left to make sure that he got everything done that he needed to do. And
It took him 2 minutes to unravel everything you did, putting all this stuff in order. We have him organized. He's got an organizer for all of his medical stuff that he gets from the doctors, all the responses he gets from the VA, from Social Security, and I try and get him to use his planner to
Good luck.
do for medical dates and things like that, but there's hope.
But we did get him his disability, and he, you know, Ginger's been always there to assist him, and I know she's there to help any other veteran that needs help. But if you have any questions, and you get them to me, and if I don't know, we'll get them to Ginger. She'll get us some answers.
I'll Google it.
Angela, quick question about your job.
Oh, yeah.
So, when the dealer calls you, what do you actually do? I mean, I know what ends up happening, but how many websites do you have to go to? Was it all on the NCIS or?
It's all what we call masked. So what's happened is software programs were written that, so instead of me having to type every request out with the person's name, date of birth, social security number. It's already in there for me. So basically, I ask the dealers if they've taken the prints, fingerprints, if they have the paperwork filled out, if the purchaser's there, the gun's there, because we want the serial number directly off the gun. We don't want it from the box. We don't want the model number. Imagine how many people have entered lost guns with a model instead of a serial. When there's only one or two, I usually call the agency and say, hey, you might want to talk to the person that they've stolen from because that's not the serial number. You know, I mean, some things can be pretty obvious. First question, how do they answer question 14? Are they a citizen, not a citizen? If they're an immigrant, non-immigrant, they have to have their documentation. You know, there are sometimes I question whether or not they really are a citizen, but we can't really call them a liar and say you filled out 14 wrong because I know. So that's the first question, is how they answer 14. So citizenship is U.S. or immigrants. If it's immigrants, then we make sure that they got their alien cards to verify those numbers. We ask all of the wonderful information about who you are, what your date of birth is, where you were born. Those are some changes. And then we ask information about firearms. Some stuff automatically comes up in our mind. The person's 18, they want to buy a handgun. No. You know, you're from Washington, you want to buy a handgun in Oregon. A couple of exceptions allowable. One, either you're in law enforcement and you have a letter from your commander to say that this is going to be a duty weapon only. Have to carry it on duty. It's not, you know, your own personal. Or two, where they're living in Washington, pawned a gun in Oregon. Are they the original pawn ticket holder? Important. If they're the original pawn ticket holder, they're allowed to purchase their own weapon back. And that's really what it is. It's a transfer, so even if it's pawned, it's a purchase. So we get those two, which probably ramps up our pawn guns and numbers quite a bit, because we have a lot of people that pawn their guns during the month and then buy it back when they have funds at the beginning. So I enter all that information, I hit the magic go button, and by the time I'm ready to look at that last page, I've already gotten most of my responses back. So unless you've got a concealed handgun license, you work at a corrections department, or you volunteer as a chaplain, Larry, at a corrections department, or you've got an arrest cycle, or the gun has an O in the serial number, or matches something else from the lost stolen databases.
What do you mean an O in the serial number?
Well, our system doesn't like O's and zeros. So if your gun has a serial number that has an O in it, I'm going to look at it. Guaranteed. We've decided there was some safety protocol that we didn't want the system to look at for us. If it was a close call, or if information was wrong, we have it automatically sent to the call taker to review. That would be one of them. I don't know.
I have a pistol with, it was made way back when, a Ruger 20,099. So that's got a whole bunch of O's in it, or are you talking O's?
Zeros. Zeros are fine. For some reason it has a problem with O's as in ocean. I'm working on that, but so far, no dice. Costs money, you know, to update all that stuff. So he would have to find where it's writing it wrong and hitting on it wrong. Then he would have to figure out how to rewrite it. And then it would take the time to rewrite it. And every upgrade is like $10,000. Not something that we want to throw around lightly.
Give it a try.
So then I review it, and like I said, in usually under 3 minutes. I'd say it's probably more like about 45 seconds.
Now, one of the
You can probably
things you
try.
said was that when a person's denied
Mhm.
and they want to challenge it, there's a number they call in on. Now, are they given the reason they're denied when they call in? Or
Yes.
they are.
And the only person that can request that information is the person. Not the spouse, not the attorney, not the priest, because it's confidential. Everything we do is confidential. So the only people that know that you have a firearm or that you went to purchase a firearm, are the dealer you bought it from, you, and the call taker.
I have a question also. You had said, like, if you're out of state, you can't be buying a firearm unless it's under these circumstances. What if you got into a raffle? Say you went to a gun show and there was a raffle and stuff. They always do a background check.
So there are, I think, 11 of us states that do a combination of long guns or handguns or all. The National Instant Check System does the balance. So if you choose to buy a firearm from a state that does national, and it's a long gun, Oregon doesn't have a problem with you purchasing a long gun from out of state, but don't go trying to purchase a handgun unless you pawned it, because they aren't going to let you have it, because Oregon says no. Okay.
My brother-in-law, he come up here and wanted to purchase a gun here in Albany here a few years ago from California. And he could not buy the gun here, except, there was an exception. The gun he was trying to purchase, once he decided that he wanted it, the gun shop here had to sell the gun to the gun shop where
There.
he lived in California. Then he was able to pick it up there.
The reason I ask is, a while ago, we had, one of the gun shops in town had a raffle for the Sons of the American Legion. The original winner of it was from California. He was denied being able to pick it up. So then they had to redo the raffle.
Well,
And
that was
that's
a
why I
choice. That was a choice that they made. So, what should have happened was guns in those raffle situations. We have a lot of those. From churches, Boys and Girls Clubs, Elks, and Ducks Unlimited, and several of the big banquets. What they do is they have one person go in, pick up the guns from the dealer. And that one person, that covers their background. Okay? So, then they raffle. And what usually happens is they have another dealer that is doing those background checks for them. Okay? So, your California brother, California says you cannot purchase any gun from any other state, period. So what they should have said was, we are going to transfer this firearm from this dealer to that dealer in the other state. Then your brother could have gone into that dealer, had that dealer perform the background check. So whatever state and however they do their backgrounds, they would have contacted that person to do the background. Then provided that your brother cleared the background, then he would have gotten his firearm.
Now, this was all done through a gun shop here in town, and they kept it there until everything was done and over with. That's why I was wondering.
Yeah.
I guess
Maybe something you want to look at in the future, so if you're buying them out of state, you want to make sure that the gun store that's handling the gun, make sure that he can contact the gun store in that state.
And you want to find out if that dealer that you're sending it to, or the dealer that you're getting it from is gonna charge you for doing that. Because that gun very well may be, well, you did a raffle, but I mean, what the chances of that? You know, my parents used to put my name on the raffles and we used to win all the time. Now that I'm an adult, I can't win for anything. But, you know, yeah, there's those chances. But, you know, the other thing is, you know, the raffle decided probably just to go ahead with somebody else that could get it rather than hold on to it. Because it can get really complex.
Yeah, they just have to redo the whole raffle again, they're gonna have to convince us, or send some paperwork up signed, they just reheld the raffle.
Yeah. There's,
I'm just curious.
yeah, there's always exceptions. So,
What was that for, the Nagat, by the way?
No, that was for, 308.
Oh, okay.
It was through Albany,
Yeah, I was starting to say if it was for that Nagat here a while back, I was the guy who ended up with it, so.
awesome. Yeah, awesome. So, yeah, sometimes I get to hear some of those stories, but, yeah. But yeah, that's the way I would deal with that. You know, if ever you have a question, ask the dealer, is there any other way to do this? Do you have another dealer in mind? Your brother may have had a dealer that he knew that was local or something that he dealt with that may have had the answer, but yeah. Network, ask questions. They don't have the answer for you, ask them who does. One agency may not know, but another one might. Like I said, they always send firearms questions to me, and I'm not the one that determines how you transport weapons in your jurisdiction, so please don't call me. You know, no, your firearm came up stolen, we got the hit for it from your agency, and no, I'm in Salem, I don't have possession of your firearm that got sold in Klamath County. Yeah.
Why not?
That might be fun. I could take a look at some of the new stuff out on the market. But.
Do we have any other questions? Ginger, we want to thank you for coming out and teaching the class. I'm sure that these guys got a little more informed and tell these people when they ask, because we are asked all the time amongst the veteran family. So I want to thank you for coming out.
Thank you for having me over. And everybody taking your time to come.